What is up, guys? Wrestling Premiere is here. Okay, it's been a long time coming, but finally I talk about a damn tag team. Not just any tag team, but a tag team that was a throwback. These guys have been on my mind for several months now. I've delayed the project many times and felt now is the perfect time. Now, if you didn't know, Deuce and Domino were this tag team that paid homage to the 50s. They were road cars from that era. Their wrestling clearly wasn't the best, but their characters made up for it, I guess. The Greasers stand out as a memory of 06-08 SmackDown, which featured a bunch of random gimmicks, like Hornswoggle, the redneck Jimmy Wang Yang, a bunch of stuff. The team fell victim to the we don't have anything for you thing, leading to their split. I personally feel there was a lot left in the tank for them, but it is what it is. Now, before this video starts, I just want to ask, who do you guys want next? Jamie Noble? Finley? I know you guys really want Finley. I know some of you really want Finley, and he's gonna come. The Hurricane. There's a bunch of stuff we could do, but just comment down below who you guys want next, and I'll definitely choose one of them. Okay, enough talk. I'm not about cool, but these guys certainly are. Okay, Deuce. Who is he? Well, he's the son of Jimmy Superfly Snuka and brother of the GOAT herself, Tamina. He had wrestling knowledge in his blood, but didn't exactly stand out for his in-ring skills. Domino was a bit better in that area for me, but again, at that time, WWE didn't prioritize wrestling. The tag team was formed down in Ohio Valley Wrestling, where they were known as the Throwbacks. Cherry Pie was the manager, and by the looks of it, the team was much more flamboyant. They feuded with tag teams such as Cody Rhodes and Shawn Spears, capturing the promotion's title 3 times. Initially, upon reaching the main roster, the team was supposed to be featured in vignettes, but those got canceled for unknown reasons. So Deuce and Domino had to start from the ground up, because nobody knew who they were. On the January 19th, 2007 episode of SmackDown, Deuce and Domino debuted. JBL was confused as to who these guys were, thinking he's caught in a time warp or something. He even said that somebody stole Sonic Drive-Thru's girl, and of course, that impressed him. Domino introduced the band, called Deuce Mr. Crackum in the Mouth, and JBL couldn't stop laughing at his name. Their opponents were such afterthoughts, and as Domino stated, even though they were limited in the ring, their characters matched with the wrestling style. It wasn't supposed to be pretty. It was very basic because they were from the other side of the tracks. Their characters were in tune with their wrestling. That's one thing to mention. By the end of the match, JBL was satisfied with what he saw, and the tag team was finding themselves very comfortable early on. Domino in comparison to Deuce was a bit laid back, but at a moment's notice he would turn into a hothead as well. Soon enough, they challenged an actual tag team, that being Paul London and Brian Kendrick, the tag team champions. Clearly the competition level caught them off guard, but they held on and managed to score a crucial win. It was a case of right place at the right time, and with the win they clearly put themselves on the map. Now obviously the champs gotta get themselves on track and beat them in the rematch, but that didn't happen. WWE was clearly trying to make the new tag team look like a threat. These wins were cleaner than a whistle. Initially the champions were gonna face off in a fatal 4-way ladder match, but it was scrapped in favor of a normal tag team match featuring Deuce and Domino. Heading into the events, the champions were doing so bad. Brian Kendrick took the L 2 nights before the title match, so in kayfabe you know exactly where the momentum was. The win itself wasn't clean, but a win's a win. As for their match at No Way Out, it was decent. The story saw the heels isolate Paul London, and it was looking like Lundrick were at a huge disadvantage despite being the champions. Without knowledge, you'd actually assume Deuce and Domino were the champs. Kendrick tags in with loads of momentum, but is quickly halted by Deuce. The victory in itself came down to pure luck. Deuce and Domino made a mistake, and Kendrick took advantage with a roll-up to steal it. Following this, Deuce and Domino disappeared, and it wasn't until after WrestleMania 23 that the feud with Lundrick would be reignited. The Throwback team was eyeing championship gold, and Lundrick were fighting champions. On the April 13, 2007 episode of SmackDown, Deuce and Domino received another chance at the titles, and again, the challengers were the favorites because Lundrick weren't mentally there because of Ashley. She had gotten attacked right before the match. This time, though, they were saved by the bell. Because the challengers were violating tag team rules, the referee disqualified them, and they were completely incensed with what went down that they barged into Teddy Long's office. He told them that they broke the rules and all they gotta do is get to stepping. That's all. Luckily though, they got another chance the following week. Deuce and Domino took notice of their errors and went into strategy mode after Paul London hit a moonsault on nobody. Because of this, Brian Kendrick was left all alone, and this marked the beginning of the end of their tag team run. He just couldn't muster up any sort of offense, and even with the fans rallying him on, Deuce and Domino captured the tag team titles. Lundrick held the gold for 334 days, and it came to an end with a moonsault that went south. Despite this, they didn't stay down. Brian Kendrick managed to beat Domino 2 weeks later, giving them a much-needed win to gain momentum. London followed up, and it was clear that a rematch was imminent, and because the high-flying duo was gaining momentum as the weeks went by, Deuce and Domino cost them a tag team match involving Regal and Dave Taylor. The heels were clearly upset, and this led to a full-on brawl. Because they decided to interfere, Teddy Long booked a triple threat tag team match for the June 1st episode. Before the match, Domino exposed his lack of knowledge, thinking the interviewers talking about the military draft rather than the WWE draft, and the guy was pissing off Deuce, who was essentially a hair trigger. This guy, you could easily piss him off. If you just give a quick stare at his girl in storyline, he'd want to beat you up. About the match, well, damn did Lundrick take a beating. The heels kept Kendrick stuck in the ring with no end in sight. Once Paul London was in, the crowd exploded. He had Hell's Fury on his side and was just unstoppable. But unfortunately, though, Cherry dropped them off the top and they retained. Lundrick looked good near the end, but it didn't result in title victory. And as for the next challengers, they weren't even on the roster. First of all, this was Vengeance Night of Champions. Deuce Domino came onto the ring and insulted Tony Gurria and Rick the Model Martel. The opponents ended up being Sergeant Slaughter and Father Jimmy, and oh man, was this bad. Deuce and Domino weren't exactly ringmasters or anything like that, but they had some decent matches during this run. This match, on the other hand, just wasn't that. I mean, what do you expect? It's two old men fighting it out with two men who weren't exactly that good in the ring. I also find it funny how the champs were pushed to the limit by these two men. You know, this was despite the fact that they hadn't wrestled regularly since the early 90s. Match itself wasn't memorable. Out of all the matches that they had, this is one of those matches I seem to recall. Deuce had to steal with the crossbody rollover, and after the match, they attacked the Legends. This led to Gurria and Martel making the save to a reaction much louder than anything in the match. The tag team division was really lacking at this point. Other than Deuce and Domino, there was nothing on SmackDown. Eminem was completely gone. Dave Taylor and William Regal, they split. London and Kendrick off to Raw, and it was a huge glaring problem for SmackDown at the time. As a matter of fact, it's a continuous issue WWE's had ever since the early 2000s. That could be a whole video topic in itself, but for now, let's talk about Deuce and Domino. Later that week on SmackDown, the tag team champions faced Crime Time from Raw. I wanted to mention this match because to me, it's a very memorable moment in Crime Time's career. Before the match even began, the babyfaces took a stare at the vehicle, causing the champs to lose control. And also, it just mirrors Crime Time looking so out of place with the SmackDown face behind them. The match itself was rather short, and in the beginning, JTG was driving Domino crazy, busting open his nose. He ends up halting his momentum, but this doesn't last long because Big Shad runs in there and takes away all that momentum. As Crime Time go for the tag finisher, Cherry gets involved, leading to a cover attempt from Domino that gives his team the win. It's one of those matches where things happen so quickly that you can't judge it properly, but it wasn't boring to me. Afterwards, the heels continued celebrating their victory despite a commercial break and a gist from Ed, so nostalgic. In the back though, Crime Time were looking to steal the vehicle and pawn it at the chop shop. It was all about that money. By the time Deuce and Domino reached the parking lot, they were gone. Now, as a result of Domino getting busted open, he broke his nose, meaning he was out of action for about a month. So they didn't return until August. The champs, they were busy feuding with the likes of Eugene rather than defending their titles, and it wasn't their fault that the tag division was lacking though. But it wasn't all bad. Why? Because the tag team got to main event SmackDown against Batista and Ric Flair. After the animal whooped his ass and stared at his girl, Deuce was starting to get paranoid, thinking to himself, oh, she may be out with him. After discovering her in Batista's locker room, he starts stuttering over his words, wondering what's up. Batista comes out all angry, but then we discover what actually went down. The heels put up a fight, and they knew that it was a struggle to accomplish the task, because those guys are former world champions. Ric Flair was a target, of course, because of his age, speed, and just about everything else, and Batista was impatiently waiting on the apron for the tag, but it took a while. In the meantime, Deuce and Domino wore down the Nature Boy. He bounced back, and in was Batista, who bounced the champs around. His momentum, of course, was much greater than that of Deuce and Domino's combined, that it took the Great Khali coming out to allow the champs to take back control. By then, the referee had rung the bell. However, Batista whooped their asses in singles competition the following week. Soon enough, though, the champs actually remembered they were just that and defended the gold against a team that was about as random as WCW 2000. Matt Hardy and MVP. Those two are in this competitive feud that ranks as a gem for me. It had good matches, good promos, entertaining segments, and it's something I suggest you watch in its entirety. But if you're not, here's my video on it. I gotta promote it, of course. They're set to challenge the team from the 50s. Because of this, they decided to take an advantage over them by attacking. Unfortunately for Deuce and Domino, the August 31st, 2007 episode marked the end of their title reign. The story in itself was more about MVP and Matt Hardy. Hardy was doing all the hard work, whereas MVP was there for the best moments. Sort of like part-timers, you know? And regarding the whole unfortunate thing, I take it back, because the title reign was one of the worst from this SmackDown era. They didn't have a single feud as champs, even Lundrick. There was one title defense featuring those guys. There was 0 great matches, 0 great promos, feuds, except I can't say anything good about the run itself. But unfortunately though, it marked the beginning of the end of Deuce and Domino. Following this, they failed to win the titles at Unforgiven. Mandela effect got me, because I seem to recall the title win occurring here, but then they got another shot 2 weeks later. The black clothes must have been a curse in their eyes, but even the white shirt was enough to best the unlikely duo. And after losing their second title match, Deuce and Domino went on a 20-match losing streak. Like, they were beating Shannon Moore with ease, now they were losing to him. Finlay was whooping their asses on a weekly basis, and basically Deuce and Domino were falling just as hard as Chris Harris later that year. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but you get what I'm saying. I could talk on and on about how they're losing to Great Khali, Finlay, Jimmy Wang Yang. That would be considered video padding. Cherry, meanwhile, turned into a babyface despite being associated with them, and they ended up turning on her. And to show how important this is, it was on WWE.com. I couldn't find it on the internet, of course, so you just gotta take my word for it. On the May 16th, 2008 episode of SmackDown, Deuce and Domino randomly came out with Maurice of all people. Even with the manager swap, they were scoring L's. Sure, they won the first match, but that was because of Maurice. She was under that fresh debutante WWE push. After that, 0 wins. Mick Foley was burying them hard on commentary. Deuce was trying out some innovative moves to score them win, and when I mean innovative, I obviously mean it was innovative for the 1950s. Even then, they couldn't win those matches. Eventually, Deuce had enough of Domino losing and they brawled. Despite the fact that Deuce and Domino fought, they regrouped in order to best their toughest challenge yet, Jesse and Festus. When I mean regroup, they argued and brawled. I don't need to mention that they lost, you already know that, and afterwards, Deuce cracked Domino in the mouth, marking June 20th, 2008 as the end of their tag team run. So that's the tag team. Honestly, I thought they were better than I expected, but after making this video, I just gotta say, nostalgia lies sometimes. The guys stood out for their characters and entrances, but they barely spoke, and creative didn't have many stories for them. I don't know if they were over or not because SmackDown's taped, but I do think they should have remained, because without each other, they ended up being released. And them being a tag team would have worked out well had WWE actually had some things for them to do. Like, after they lost the tag titles, they fell hard. Like I said, the team just shouldn't have been split then and there. They should have continued. They should have gave them some other stories as well. But they didn't. It's a damn shame because, like I said, they're not the best in ring, but their wrestling style fits their characters, and there just should have been a spot for them because the SmackDown division was very, very weak at this point. The tag team division, I should note.